Yeah, the topic is guys, mute yourself. So today what going to discuss is what is this guys? Git. So what is Git? Guys, does anyone knows what is Git? Guys, does anyone know what is Git? What is SVN?
SVN means source versioning tool. While creating the code, or there are multiple times they are creating a code, right? So there is a version be there. So
Hmm,
between one deployment to other deployment, so we
very
can
good.
store that code into the one location. That resource is called Git tool. We can use that. Okay.
Yes,
Mhm.
very good. So something like so SVN is nothing but a subversion control. Subversion. Subversion means versioning. So something like it is like as a uh, so what it call it as a source code management tool. So what is source code? So whenever the developer develop that code, right? That code will copy it under the one repository. So that is a source code management tool. Source code. So they will manage the source code. Whatever the developers develop that code, that will be copied under the repository. Under the repository. Source code, right? So something like so what is open source, guys? Guys, what is open source? So what is
Open
the
source. Open
open
source
source?
means it no cost, actually free of cost, and we
Mm,
can use that code. We can customize that whatever we required. Okay.
source code also available. So our source code is nothing but a developer developed that code. So to build the OS, that code also available. Source code. Source code is nothing but a developer developed that programs, right? The programs is nothing but a source code. Whatever the developers develop that codes is nothing but a source code. The source code will be copied under a one location, a one repository is called as a so are called as source code management. That is a called as a repository. I call it as a repository. Guys understood? Mm. So what is this? Source code management tools. So what are the source code management tools, guys? So name it, call it as a version control. Version control. So source code management tool or a version control. Something like so this is on repository. A repository is like a something like a so this is a repository. So repository. So something like so these are the developers. So developer systems. So whatever the developers develop that code, either something like a status, WhatsApp, or contacts, voice calling. So these are the four modules. Four developers took that modules. This module, this module, and this module, and this module. So this is like what thing but a status module. So this is nothing but a chat module in the WhatsApp, guys. So this is nothing but a voice calling or video calling. This is nothing but a contacts module. So these are the four modules. Four modules developer develop that code and push it in the repository. So push it in the repository. The name is called as a WhatsApp. So in the WhatsApp, so they are call it in the they are pushing their code to. So whatever developer develop that code and push it to that repository, push it to that WhatsApp repository. So this is nothing but a source code management tool or a version control system. So what is a version control system mean? Something like initially WhatsApp WhatsApp 1.0 developed something like chat and contacts, right? So the first innovation is chat and contacts, only two modules. After 2.0, the future developed called as a chat, status, and contacts. So 3.0, they are introduced as a voice calling. 4.0, they are introduced as a or something like a video calling. So 5.0, they are called as a group chat, single chat, group chat. The version control system is called as a VCS. VCS is nothing but a version control system or a source code management tools. So what are the source code management tools or a version control systems they are providing? What are the tools are there? So which companies are providing those tools? Those tools are something like a S CVCS, CVCS and DVCS. So what is CVCS is nothing but a centralized version control system. And DVS is nothing but a distributed version control system. So centralized version control system and distributed version control system, guys. So what is the difference between centralized version control system and a distributed version control system? So earlier it using SVN subversion. So nowadays we are using the Git. Nowadays we are using the Git version control system. So S1 is a centralized version control system. Git is the DVCS, distributed version control system. So what is the difference between centralized version control system and a distributed version control system? For example, a centralized version control system is nothing but a so this is the server. In this server SVN. So in this server or in this repository. So this is the a remote repository. This is the remote repository and developers, whatever the developers develop that code and push it to the commit to the commit commit to the a centralized version control system is SVN. So if something goes wrong on the SVN, the server, so the data will not retrieve. The data, so will not the code will not retrieve. So this is the drawback of the SVN. So SVN is a centralized version control system. So there is no data is in the local. So the everything is in the remote location. If something goes wrong on the remote, the entire data will be crashes. So that is the SVN subversion control system. So DVCS means a distributed version control system. So distributed version control system. So here, so there is a local repository. So there is a local repository. This is the remote repository. This is a remote repository. This is remote repository. This is a local repository. So these are the developers. So these are the developers developing that code and they are pushing it to their local repositories. They're pushing it into the local repository. They keep it in the local, then it push it to the then push it to the something like a commit, commit, something like they are committing to the local repository. So they're committing to the local repository and push it to the push pull push pull pull to the remote repository. So something like if something goes wrong on the remote repository, we have a copy of the local repository, so we can retrieve easily. So we can retrieve easily. Can retrieve easily. So that is the reason a distributed version control system is more popular than a centralized version control system. So who developed distributed version control system? Git. So again, Git developed a Linus Torvald. Who is this? Guys, who developed Git? Linus
Linus
Torvald.
Torvalds.
Who developed Linux? Guys, who developed
Linus
Linux?
Torvalds.
Yes, Linus Torvald. So the same Linus Torvald developed Git also. The same Linus Torvald distribution version define he invented or created the distribution version control system Git. So again, again, so Linux released as a Linus Torvald. So Linux released as a open source, right? Open source. The same way, the Linus Torvald released Git as a open source. What is this, guys? Open source is nothing but a free of cost and source code also available. If source code available, so Git Linux defined, right? The Git commands also like as a, so Git CLI, he defined a Git CLI and commands, Git commands. So, so some companies, so this is the open source and source code also available, right? Git source code. Took that source, took that source code, took that source code and so the companies, Atlassian. So Atlassian took that source code and created their own Git call it as a bit bucket. So this is a GUI. The same way GitLab company. So GitLab company took that source code and created a GitLab. So this is also a GUI. The same way GitHub. So nowadays GitHub is Microsoft. So Microsoft took that source code and created their own GUI, Git GUI called GitHub. So GitHub GUI. So took that source code and created their own versions of Git. So their own versions of Gits. What are those, guys? Bit. What is that, guys?
Bitbucket.
Bitbucket, GitLab, GitHub. These three are the GUI. So whatever the commands we are working on the CLI, something like a git commit, git add, git status, git merge. The same commands they are created as a buttons and they're created as a buttons and so we can use it easily. You can use it easily. Now guys understood? So why we need to use a Git, guys? Git is a source code management tool or a version control system. So it is the repository. It is the repository to, to push the code. Whatever the developers, if the developers are something like, for example, Anand is there, Srinivas is there, and Victoria is there. So they created a so. So whatever the people is there, they created their own code, something like so Victoria, Srinivas, Anand, Victoria, Srinivas, Anand, Hari. These people are working on the Terraform project. What is the project? Terraform project and Ansible project and so and Git also. So whatever they are creating the code for the Ansible and Terraform. So they created it in Hinder and they will push it to their local repository and push it to the remote repository. So these are also having the code, whatever they rated the code for the infra, IAC or a configuration management tool. So those folders also, whatever the code also, this code also copied it under the a remote repository or a Git repository. Guys understood now? So why we are using Git? Guys understood?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, right? So whatever you are writing the code, that code will be pushed to the Git repository.
So, Hari, one doubt. Actually, in the real time, we need use GIT commands line using, or it's a GUI tool most of the times.
I didn't understand your question, but what I understood is right. In the real time,
Huh.
in the real
Uh,
time, you are saying something like what the commands we are using. We are using the GUI or we are
or
using the
command line.
CLI.
Yeah, correct, correct.
Yeah, both we are using.
Oh, okay.
Both, so we are using.
So
So whatever you are, yeah,
both we need to know that, right?
both we need to know.
Okay, okay.
So something like Git GUI roles, Git CLI and Git GUI. So for example, if you want to commit or something like if you want to push the codes, so we can use a VS Code also. So VS Code, we can use VS Code and we can commit and we can push the code to the remote repository via GUI also. You will understood. You will understood. You will understood. Once we start, you will understood. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Source code management tool. Yeah. Source code management tool. So the management of the changes, either documents or computer programs or large website and other collection of information. So what is that? So the source code management is nothing but the management of a changes to the documents. The management of a changes to the documents or a programs or a large websites and other collection of information. So what we discussed about, about the centralized version control system and distributed version control system. So centralized version control system is SVN, subversion, distributed version control system is Git. So what I already told you, right? So there is a centralized repository. So whatever the working copy, something like a working copy is nothing but a that workstation, the developer's workstation one, developer workstation two, developer workstation three. So they are commit the code and update the code. They commit the code and update the code. They commit the code and update the code. So something like so this is Victoria, this is Anand, this is Srinivas. So Victoria is working on the chat, Anand is working on the contacts, and Srinivas is working on the status. Something like so Victor is working on the chart, right? After developing her code, so she commit to the centralized repository. So and again, so the on the developer that code for the status and they commit to the central repository. So and the working copy. Srinivas contacts, right? He worked on the contacts and he commit to the repository. So now working copy something like so Victoria having only the chat content. He want a status and she wants the status and the contacts programs. How we can get it from these two. So we can use the update command. The same way, whatever he pushes, so Anand wants the code for the code, whoever write the Srinivas and Victoria, that code needs to be in local. So he update, it will get the code, whoever developer, that whoever pushed something like Victoria and the Srinivas. So if something goes on the central server, the entire copy will go on. The entire copy will go. So that's the reason we need a alternative solution. That solution was developed by the Linus Torvald. So like as a Git. So Git is the distributed version control system. Git is the distribution version control system. Distribution version control system. So something like they're created as a local repository. This is the local repository, and this is the remote repository. So whatever he working, he will push to the local repository. Then so commit to the local repository and push it to the remote repository. So the same way, Anand also commit to the local repository and push it to the remote repository. The same way, Srinivas also commit to the local repository and push it to the remote repository. Push it to the remote repository. There is a local repository also there. There is a local repository also there. If something goes on the remote repository, so we have a code on the local repository also. We have a code on the local repository also. That's the reason distributed version control system developed. So this is developed by Linus Torvald, who developed the Linux. The Git also developed by the Linus Torvald, and he released as a open source and took that source code, and a few of the companies. So few of the companies. So few of the companies are took that source code. So few of the companies are took the source code. So took the source code and created their own versions of their own types of Bitbucket. So this is also one type of a remote repository. This remote repository developed by the Atlassian. So this is the Atlassian company designed the Atlassian company designed the Bitbucket. The same way GitLab, GitHub. Yeah. So this is the GitHub. So this initially this was developed by GitHub developers, GitHub community. After that, so this is sign in, right? Let me sign in. I have account on this authentication. 162.191. This is a MFA, multi-factor authentication. Okay, you see. So this is the GitHub. So this is the a GitHub repository. So I have the Git landings. I have the something like I have the repositories. This is the sample DevOps project repository. I have this repository. So I have copied all the data to these repositories. These are the repositories. And I have also a Bitbucket account. Let me check it. Yeah. So this is our Bitbucket. So repositories. So these are my Terraform main Terraform. These are the repositories. So we have these are the repository. The same way also GitLab. GitLab.
Yeah. Actually, three are using the same purpose, right?
Three are using same purpose.
Okay, based on the means company requirement,
Based on the
yeah,
company requirement, so
they
we
will
can,
use that. Okay.
yes, yeah, I see. So AWS DevOps, this is my project. Okay. So this is a GitLab account. This is a GitHub account. This is the Bitbucket account. So these three purposes are same. These three are the purposes same. This is the as a source code management tool or a version control system. So we can copy our data. We can keep our data into these remote repositories. We can keep our these into a remote repositories. Guys, 1 second. Yeah, guys. So these three are the so GitHub account, Bitbucket account, GitHub account, and so GitLab account. These three are the purpose is same, guys. The purpose is same same to save our code into the repository. To save our code into the repository is nothing but a so Git repository or something like the Git repository, Bitbucket, GitHub, so GitLab. These three are the same, right, guys? Yeah, understood? So Git is nothing but a source code management tool. Git is a distributed version control tool that supports distributed non-linear workflows by providing the data assurance for developing quality of a software. So Git has a distributed version control tool that supports distributed non-linear workflows by providing the data assurance for developing quality of software. For developing a quality of software. Something like how it works, Git how it works, something like a Git. So I already told you, right? A local repository. This is the a local repository. This is the remote repository. So this is the a remote repository. So something
Hari,
like
Hari, can you please differentiate Git, GitLab, GitHub? Three are the three, right? So can you please
yeah.
differentiate these three so then we can clear idea of it. Git, GitLab, GitHub.
So these three are the same. These three are the same. So can you explain me what is the difference between Linux, Red Hat, Oracle Linux, Ubuntu, AX, and
Mhm.
UX?
Okay.
So
Mhm.
the core feature is same, but
Mhm.
they took that source code and they created their own Git tools. What is that? Bitbucket developed by the Atlassian company. So the
Mhm.
same way. So this is also same. This is also works for the same. Same in the sense. Yeah. So this is the remote repository, right? So
Mhm.
this is nothing but a yeah. This is nothing but don't know how to draw. But this is nothing but a yeah. I can try it. I can try. Yeah. So this is remote repository, right? So what is the remote repository? GitHub, Bitbucket, so Bitbucket and
GitLab.
GitLab. So these three are the remote repositories. For example, so whatever the code so this is the code. So whatever the code we are pushing the code into the remote repository. So this is the a remote repository. So which we store the data or code under the this repository. Either whatever it may be. If you are using GitLab or Bitbucket or GitHub, whatever it may be. So this is the just remote repository. This repository is to store the data, to store the source code, to store the source code. Now you understood? Something like, for example, this is a Anand. This is the Anand and his work. This is a so Anand laptop. So he copied something like a CD. Uh, so Terraform is created a folder. He created a Terraform folder and created the stacks. Created the stacks are something called a sandbox, dev, and prod. So in the sandbox, he created a something like main.tf, whatever the tf. So these are the files Git is not recognizing. So this is the working copy files. You just created the files in your laptop only. How we can push these files into a remote repository? Remote repository in the sense how we can push this code, how we can push the data to the remote repository, how we can copy, how we can send the data to the remote repositories. Understood? Whatever you are developing the code, that code needs to go to the remote repository. Those are the GitLab, Bitbucket, or GitHub. Okay, Anand. So this is not recognized by the Git. How it recognizes the Git? If you want to recognize the Git, so something like we need to add Git add is the Git add is the command. We can add into the local repository. Once you add into the remote, you add into the something like a. So this is the working directory. This is the working directory. This is the staging area. This is the local repository. This is your local repository. How we can send our data to the a local repository? So with the help of git add and git commit. So if you add our code into the git add, it will git knows. Yeah. So these are the files we want to add in the local repository, git local repository. So then we add it in the git add. Then so we need to commit the files. Whatever the files we are added, we need to commit into the local repository. So this is the git commit. So whatever the working copy, we need to add git add. Git doesn't know these files. How Git knows? So if you use the git command, git add, yeah. So Git is adding these files to the local repository. So once you add, you need to commit to the local repository. Once you commit to the local repository, then you can push it to a GitHub, or you can push it to Bitbucket, or you can push it to GitLab. So this is the push command. Pushing pushing the data from your local repository, pushing data from your local repository to pushing our data from local repository. This is the local repository. How we can add our files into working copy? This is the working copy. So this knows Git. This doesn't knows Git. How to knows Git? By using git add and git commit. Git add and git commit. Once you add and commit the files into the local repository, so then we can push and we can pull. Then we can push and we can pull the data. We can pull the data. So something like if you want to push, so something like Anand and Victoria also, Victoria, Anand and Srinivas. These three are the working. So from their laptop, the local repository, they're having a local repository. Again, they git add, git commit, then git push, git add, git commit, git push, something like. So git push is nothing but a, so we can push the whatever we wrote the code into the code in our laptop. So we want to push it to remote repository. So the command is git push. So whatever pushed Srinivas and Victoria pushed that code. So we want to get it in our local repository. So we can use the git pull. Git push is to send our data to remote repository. So git pull is nothing but a to download to download the repository, to download the code whatever Victoria or something like a Srinivas or Anand push it to the remote repository. That code we need to pull means download to your local repository. Push is nothing but a upload. Push is nothing but a upload. Pull is nothing but a download. Download your code, upload your code to git push, and download your code to git pull. Git pull, guys. The first time you are downloading the code from the remote repository by using git clone. Git clone. What is the command, guys? Git clone. Git clone is the Git clone is the to pull the data from a remote repository to a local repository. Local repository means you are working in our workstation. So that is a for the first time it is called as a Git clone. So after that we need to use Git pull to to clone the repository, to get the repository, to download the code, whatever the new code, to download it to the from the remote repository, local repository, git pull. So to push, to upload your code from your local repository to remote repository, that is nothing but a git push. Guys, understood? Little bit?
Yes.
Yes, right?
Yes. While
So
doing the
once,
practical, more idea come, I think.
you will get a more idea while doing the practicals.
Basically, we create a code in a local system. So we
Mm,
need to store it in a remote. Then we need
mm,
to use some commands. So through
mm.
only we can put it in a remote repository. Then others also can use that code like that, right?
Yes, very good. Now you understood.
Mhm.
So this is the a remote repository. So this is a remote repository. So what are the remote repository guys? Examples, tell me.
Like just like Google Drive or other Git. Okay, in this particular usage, okay,
Mm,
GitHub, GitLab,
mm,
Bitbucket. Okay.
yeah, these are the remote repositories, right? Because so these three are the remote repositories. So I want to copy the data. Yeah, this is one guy, this is other guy, this is other guy. So first, so you want to something like the repository name is called as a Terraform, for example. Terraform hyphen main. So in the remote repository, so a repository name it call it as a repository name. What is the repository name, guys? So Terraform main. So that Terraform main repository is nothing but a folder. That folder contains the data. Data means either code or something like whatever it may be. So for example, you are using a GitHub. GitHub. So this is the GitHub. For example, sample DevOps project. I want to, so this repository having the data, right? I want this data into my local machine. I want this data into my laptop. How we can do it? So first time, I already told you, right? First time, first time we can get it from remote repository to local repository. The Terraform hyphen main. So that repository or a folder I want to download from a remote repository that is a GitHub to my local machine. The first time we can use a git clone. What is the command, guys? First time we can use the git clone. So git clone. The same way here. The same way here. Yeah. So now in my laptop having the Terraform main, right? Terraform main. So here also we have the main, Terraform main folder and Terraform main folder. So now, so there have a sandbox, a dev, and prod. We have a three stacks: sandbox, dev, and prod. Sandbox, dev, prod. So we
What
have
are
a
those? What are those?
stacks. For example, stacks.
Mm-hmm.
So Terraform is a IAC tool. So infra building, right? This is a sandbox. This is a dev environment. This is the production environment. Sandbox environment, dev environment, production environment. So there is a one stack, right? So one stack main dot versions dot. So that is Terraform. So for example, Srinivas is working on the sandbox. and Anand is working on the dev environment, and Victoria is working on the production environment. So he modifies the code and push it to local repository. So something like there is a local repository. This is a Terraform main is the local repository. So whatever he modified the code, he pushed it to the local repository. He committed to the local repository. So whatever he added, something like he added code. So then he added to the git add. So git, if you add the git add, git knows, oh, a new data is coming into the local. So next git commit. What are the commands for the local, guys? These are the two commands: git commit, git add, and git commit. So it will push it to the local repository. Then you want to push to the a remote repository. The command is a git push. Git push is the command. If you push the command, whatever he modified, it will reflect on the remote repository. The same way, git push it reflect on the remote repository. This is a way remote to the reflect to the something like. So whatever Srinivas pushed the code, but you don't know that you don't have the newly pushed code to the newly pushed code in the remote repository. So how you can get it the remote repo how you can get it the code? You can get it the code by using the git pull command. What is the command? Git pull command. So whatever Anand pushed the code, Srinivas needs, then you can use the git pull. Good git pull means, so whatever the new code in the repository, the updated code will be downloaded to in our local machine. So whatever the newly updated code we want to push it, we want to send it to the remote repository, a git push. So git push is nothing but a to send data to the remote repository. Git pull is nothing but a to download the data, whatever the new data in the repository to download the git pull. To download the git pull. So git add and git commit. What are these? Git add and git commit. Git add and git commit. These are the two, two commands. These commands are only for the local repository. These commands are only for the local repository. Git push, git pull, git clone. These commands for the remote repository. Git push, git pull, git clone. So these three are for the remote repository purpose. Guys, tell me what are the commands for the local repository we can use? Git add and git commit. So git status also. Git status. Git branch. So git merge. I will tell you guys, no worries. So these are the commands. We can use it in the local repository. So these are the commands we can use for the remote repository. So we can use for the remote repository. Guys, understood? Now you got the little bit idea about the Git, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes, right, guys. So yeah, so now you got the uh now you got it about the Git repository. Now how to install the Git and download how to download it and how to install the Git on our Windows machine, and how to work on the Git. So you can download the Git from the website, and Git, if you download the Git and install the Git, and you have already VS Code installed already, right? You have already installed the VS Code, right, guys?
Yes.
Yeah. So we need these two. We need these two, and for remote repository, GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. Guys, I will show you any one of these. I will show you any one of the GitLab, Gitbucket, or Bitbucket. I will show you how to sign up. We need a sign up for these accounts, either GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket. So once you sign up this account, so we can push the code, whatever the code from your local to GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket or something like a, we can clone from here to there, or we can do it. We can do it tomorrow. So what are the requirements we need, guys? Remote
Yes.
account, login or sign up, then Git download, then Git install and VS Code. So we need these requirements to work on the Git, guys. To work for the week, we need these. We need these. Is understood? A
Yes.
remote login purpose, we need so remote login purpose, GitHub or GitLab or Git Bitbucket accounts. So Git download and Git install and VS Code download and VS Code install. Then we can start it. So we can start the Git tomorrow, guys. Now you understood?
Yes. Question, Ari.
Yeah.
So is Git the only source code management tool used by all companies, or are there other source code management tools apart from Git?
Yes. So these are the source code management tool. Source code management tool is nothing but a whatever the developer or anywhere, whatever the developers are creating the test cases and IT team, the code for infra or something like a configuration, whatever the code is there, whatever the code is there, that code will be copied somewhere else. That is nothing but a repository. So where we need to copy that code in the remote repository. So what are the remote repositories? GitHub,
Like,
Bitbucket, GitLab. Now you understood?
yes, I understand. I'm asking if there are other apart from Git or GitLab, apart from Git, if there are other tools, other source code management
Git
tools, or
is
is
a
it only
CLI.
Git?
Git is a Git CLI. So most of
Yeah,
the
is it the
companies are
only one
using,
used by every
yes,
company?
yeah, every company.
Okay, okay.
So they are
Oh,
using, so some of the people, some of the companies are using GitLab, some of the companies are using GitHub, some of the companies are using Bitbucket.
okay, okay. Thank you.
Okay. So whatever it may be, they are using GitLab, they are using GitHub, they are using Bitbucket. If some companies are using both, if some companies are using only one, if some companies are using three, okay, based on that company, they are using the any one of them, GitLab, GitHub, or Bitbucket.
Okay.
Understood, right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.